Content warning. Episodes of Gray Matter may contain themes and depictions of extreme mental illness, traumatic bodily harm, and death. If you aren't in the right headspace to engage with those depictions right now, maybe this episode should wait for another time. Otherwise, proceed with caution.
Hey, welcome back to Gray Matter. You've been in here a lot lately, you know that? Do you ever think about how much time you spend here, watching whatever fucked up tape I give you just to have some kind of entertainment to fill the shrinking space between your first and last breaths? I mean, everybody dies, right? But do you ever think about how short life really is? Does it keep you up at night? Do you stand fearfully at the edge of a yawning abyss, screaming at an absent God because you were created smart enough to know you'll die but not smart enough to know how to stop it? No, neither do I. Anyway, I've got a recommendation for you if you still want it. It's called Jackrabbit, and it's about a man trying to catch a charming little pest. That's all. Nothing ominous or existential or soul-shatteringly bleak, just good, wholesome fun. And if you believe that, then I've got a bridge to sell you.
Jackrabbit. Written and directed by Jonathan Inbody.
I was living in the same house that my parents had died in. My father had gone first, courtesy of a heart attack, and he'd been found slumped over in his home office with his belt unbuckled and a dirty magazine sitting on his lap. Almost 10 years later, my mother had died in bed. She had her hands folded, a smile on her face like she knew it was coming, and a freshly notarized copy of her will sitting on her bedside table. In it, she left me the family home, a small, 2-story house in the country with a leaky roof and loose siding. In the 10 years between my father's death and my mother's, my teenage dream had given way to the dazed waking life of adulthood. I had bills to pay, a shitty job to spend 40 hours of the week working, and a fresh-faced fiancée that I loved more than anything. Kate and I moved into the old house a few weeks after my mother died, drawn in by the promise of living somewhere that we wouldn't have to pay rent. It was a fixer-upper, in the way that old houses are, but it was home. Between shifts of mindless factory work, I fixed the roof, replaced the rotted old wood that made up the porch, and gave the new siding a fresh coat of paint. After only a year of living there, it was something I could be proud of. It was home. My home. And I had fixed it. But it seemed to be a losing battle. Every time I would fix one thing, something else would break. If it wasn't a burst pipe, it was a broken sump pump, and with every repair came a price tag. Even doing it myself, the cost of materials and tools started to eat away at our already meager paychecks, and soon we just couldn't keep up. Since then, I had done what I could when we could afford to do it, but it seemed like once a month there was something broken that I couldn't fix. My newest annoyance was a family of rabbits. They had built a warren somewhere near the crumbling foundations of the house's cellar, and as they dug down to support it, they had unintentionally broken through. There was now a pile of dirt and chunks of concrete sitting in the corner of the basement, slowly growing as gravity forced the dirt inward. Above it, the corner of my home office had begun to sag, warping the wooden floor and making me wonder what would collapse next. By the time I set traps in the warren, the rabbits had abandoned it. The clever little bastards had tunneled and made a home somewhere else on the property, but I knew they'd be back. So I put traps in the underbrush around the back of the house near the edge of the woods, and I waited. Finally, on a cold morning at the end of September, I caught one.
Ethan? Ethan.
What did you say?
I think I heard one of the traps. You might have gotten a rabbit.
Oh, God. Please.
Hey, I have to get up for work. Do you want me to go check?
No, I'll look after breakfast.
Okay. Go back to sleep, babe. Love you.
Later that morning, once I had coffee and a bagel in my stomach, I put on my work boots and walked around the back of the house, sweeping my feet back and forth in the ankle-high brush to find where I'd laid the traps. The first trap was empty, and the second, but as I approached the third, I realized I could hear the soft taps of padded feet. I picked up the trap and looked inside, where a strange-looking rabbit was chewing on the metal mesh. Its fur was dark red, almost purple, with speckled patches of black that ran along its arched back like divots on the back of a domino and led to a small white cottontail. Its ears were long and thin, with sharp points at the tops, and as it turned its small head to look at me, I noticed something even stranger. At the center of its brow, just above its small, whiskered mouth, sat one gigantic eye. Inside of a reddish iris sat its lone, oversized pupil, where milky, glittering swirls of deep color circled around each other and intertwined like an organic nebula. I stared into the kaleidoscopic array of swirling colors for what felt like hours, unable to tear myself away from the cyclopean cony's unblinking gaze. Finally, the animal blinked and I came to my senses. I reached up with one hand and it scurried into the far corner of the metal trap, squealing and shaking like it was about to have a heart attack. Poor little guy. Suddenly, the rabbit stiffened and its ears shot straight up. Its head turned towards me and its lone eye opened wider than I had thought possible, the colors inside swirling and churning like it was starting to boil. Darkness pushed in at the edges of my vision, and as I stared blankly at the little rabbit's glowing eye, I felt my knees begin to get weak. After that, everything went black. The world had disappeared from around me. I was weightless, unmoored, floating aimlessly in a pitch-black void. I was everything, and nothing. A microscopic point of blinding white light rose up in the distance and shot towards me like a bullet as it grew larger and larger. The wall of light collided with me like a wave, thundering against my skin and washing over me. I bolted up. I was sitting in the rolling chair in my home office. Outside the window, gentle snow was falling. On the wooden desk in front of me sat a double-barreled shotgun. My hand reached out to touch it, even though I didn't want it to. I was locked in, unable to do anything but watch as I loaded the gun and raised it to my chin. I lowered the handle towards the wooden floor, and lifted one foot and put my big toe on the trigger. I heard myself choke back a sob. Then my eyes lifted and turned to the small mirror hanging on the wall. My face stared back at me with red, puffy eyes, an unshaved face, and a resigned, hopeless frown. That's all, folks, I heard my own voice say, and then I felt my toe press down on the trigger. When I woke up, I was back in the woods in early September, laying in the underbrush surrounded by fallen leaves. The metal trap was sitting open, empty, next to me. I stumbled back towards the house, looking up at the afternoon sun sitting high in the sky. How long had I been out here? Hours? It was so hard to think. My head was pounding, and everything seemed too bright, too loud. I opened the door and stumbled over to the couch, then collapsed onto the cushions and began to shake. It was like I was having the worst hangover of my life. I was clammy, drenched in cold sweat and riding waves of nausea. What the hell had happened to me? Some kind of seizure? A stroke? I felt like I'd been put through a washing machine and then left to tumble in the dryer. And I was so tired. My eyes closed. And when they opened back up, The first thing I saw was my wife standing over me. I had slept for hours, and as Kate made dinner, I tried to explain what had happened to me.
That's all, folks?
Yeah, I don't know why. And then I pulled the trigger and...
And you woke up out back.
Yeah, but it was like it had been hours. So I came inside, laid down, fell asleep, and then you came home.
Well, it's weird, I'll give you that. I'm almost jealous. You get all the interesting dreams.
It wasn't a dream. It happened. I saw it. I was there.
And you watched yourself kill yourself?
Yes, and he knew I was there. He knew I was watching.
How would he know that?
Because when he was me, he saw it.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yes, it does.
Well, it doesn't matter because you're not going to kill yourself. You're not going to kill yourself, right?
I wasn't planning on it, but future me, he was.
You didn't see the future.
It doesn't matter what you call it. I saw it. I saw myself die. How could that be anything but the future?
It's a little early for a midlife crisis, isn't it?
It's not a fucking... What about the rabbit, huh? Purple, one eye, you ever see anything like that before? Because I sure as shit haven't.
Ethan, I get it, okay? You had a nightmare. It fucked you up. It's okay. But I need you to take a step back and ask yourself which is more likely. A purple, one-eyed rabbit showed you the moment of your own death as a defense mechanism, or you had a bad dream.
Don't use your teacher voice with me. I'm not a fucking fourth grader.
Hey.
Sorry, it happened, okay? It happened. I saw what I saw, and it fucked me up. It's probably gonna keep fucking me up. I'm not ready to die. I've never even had a job I like.
You're not going to die.
Yes, I am. Maybe not now, maybe not in a couple of months, or a couple of years, or hopefully even in a couple of decades, but I am going to die, and I don't want to do it in the same house where my parents fucked to make me. I don't want to do it while I work making car parts for $14 an hour. I want to have a real fucking life. Kind they promise on television. Not this debt and all this desperate bullshit trying to dig myself out of a hole they threw me in straight from the cradle.
You know what I meant. Just, please, don't buy a gun.
I won't. What's for dinner? We didn't talk about it much after that. It lingered in the way old arguments do, but there wasn't anything more to say. Over the next month, we grew more and more distant. Kate spent all her time at home grading papers and making lesson plans, and I spent mine placing and checking traps. The longer I spent hunting the rabbits, the further they seemed to be. I had found scat, old dens and warrens, even bits of roughage with tiny bite marks, but no matter how long I searched, that one-eyed little bastard was nowhere to be seen. I knew that if I just found it, killed it, then everything could go back to normal. There'd be no more sleepless nights, no more crying fits at my desk, or mornings where I just couldn't manage to get out of bed. What was the point? All I could think of was the shotgun, the look on my face in the mirror. That's all, folks. Was that really all there was? A mediocre life and an early death with a few short decades of desperate striving in between? Didn't any of it mean something? I thought that if I worked enough, bled enough, that my life would change for the better, but none of it was true. Had I really been born only to strive and suffer and die? There had to be more. By the beginning of November, my dread and ennui had become a frenzy. I had to catch it. I had to kill it. I wasn't helpless. I was a man, an American, a human being. I was in control. If I could just catch that goddamn rabbit. One cold morning, while I brushed frost off the traps in the woods behind the house, I heard the sound of shoes stepping on frozen leaves. There was someone walking towards me. Hello?
Hi. Ethan, right?
Yeah, do I know you?
I'm Mark. I work with your wife. We've met a couple of times at teacher events and things.
Right, yeah, it's Whitaker, right? Mark Whitaker? You're the guidance counselor?
Yeah, that's right.
So, what are you doing here?
Well, Kate said that you've been having kind of a difficult time lately, and she asked if I could come by on my lunch break and talk with you.
To me.
Sorry?
She wants you to talk to me. She wants you to tell me that I'm crazy, that I'm having some kind of mental breakdown or midlife crisis. She wants me to suddenly have a moment of clarity and go back to pretending everything is okay, when it isn't.
She's worried about you, Ethan. Can you blame her?
A little, yeah, if she thinks that someone who comforts kids after they get bullied is going to be able to magic me back to fucking normal.
That's a little reductive.
Oh, you picked that up?
Look, I'm not going to pretend that this is comfortable for me. It isn't. But your wife is worried about you. And after what she told me, so am I.
Well, I appreciate that, Mark.
A lot of the kids call me Wit.
Of course they do. So what do you want to hear, Wit? Do you want me to tell you that my dad didn't hug me enough, or that I used to get shoved into a lot of lockers as a kid?
Is that true? Does it have anything to do with what you're going through?
What I'm going through? Do you mean how a one-eyed rabbit showed me my own suicide, and now my wife is asking me to act like it didn't happen?
Yeah. That.
Okay, tell you what. Help me swap out the food in these traps, and I'll tell you all about it.
Deal.
Great, here.
What is this? Lettuce?
Carrots, just like the cartoons.
Rabbit season.
What?
Rabbit season. From Looney Tunes. Bugs Bunny. You know. What's up, Knock? Wrong turn at Albuquerque.
Oh, right. What's the name of that guy, the one who's always trying to catch him?
Yosemite Sam?
No, the bald, pudgy guy with the gun.
Elmer Fudd?
Yeah, I know how he feels. Him and that coyote that chases the Roadrunner.
You mean because you can't catch it? The rabbit.
Yeah.
Well, if it's any consolation, the reason Elmer Fudd never catches Bugs Bunny, or why Wile E. Coyote never catches the Roadrunner, is because if they did, then the cartoon would be over. That's all, folks.
What did you say?
That's all, folks. It's what Porky Pig says at the end of the cartoons.
Why does he do that?
You know, he's like telling the audience to go home. Show's over. Curtains. You know?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Have you heard of biological determinism, Whit? Or, do you know about the idea of the prime mover?
Should I?
I don't know. It's... Well, let me take you through it. Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, he thought that if there was a god, that God was powerless. God was just this thing or being out in the universe somewhere, and the only thing that made him God was that he pushed the first thing into motion. So he moved an atom, and it bumped into another one, and that one bumped into two more, and that was it. He started the ticking clock that makes the universe move. Without that push, there's nothing. But once everything was moving, it couldn't be interfered with. It was just action and reaction, atoms colliding and bouncing away from each other.
I'm not really following.
Okay, just... If all that we are, you and me, is just atoms bouncing off of each other, just brain chemistry and neurons firing outputs, reacting to inputs, then there's no free will. We're just complicated machines reacting to being acted upon.
Sure, but what does that have to do with anything? What's it mean?
What it means is that everything is predetermined. Our births, our lives, our deaths. If all we can do is react to stimuli in a closed system, then how could anything ever change? It's not fate, but it's set. It's permanent.
But if we don't know what choices we're going to make or how we'll react when things happen, then there is a choice. That's free will.
Exactly. Except I know. The little bastard showed me, like Schrodinger's fucking cat. If I didn't know, if I hadn't seen, then maybe I could have changed it. But now I know. And now I can't.
If you really believe that, why even try to catch it? Why not just sit in your office and wait to die?
Because I don't want to believe it. I want to throttle that dumb little pest until it stops kicking, then cook it for fucking dinner and get on with my life, but I can't. I have to know. If I can catch it, then maybe the future isn't written. Maybe I'm not destined to die with tears on my face and a gun in my mouth.
Ethan, if you're feeling suicidal...
I'm not. Not yet. But I will be, and I don't know why. But I know it's because of what it did to me. And the only thing I can think to do is kill it before it kills me, or before I kill myself.
Well, you might need new traps. These ones are getting rusty.
There should be more in the cellar. I'll swap them out tomorrow. Sorry, I didn't mean to just...
No, it's okay. I understand. Just try to consider that things might not be as bleak as you think they are. I'm not going to say that I believe you, but I know that you believe it. And if no one can talk you out of believing it, then do what you've got to do. But give yourself some time. And if nothing changes, if you don't see your monster rabbit again, or if you don't have any more visions of the future, maybe consider the possibility that this is all in your head. There's nothing wrong with needing help.
It's easy to say when you're not the one that needs it.
I know, but I'm here, okay? I'll have Kate write down my number, in case you ever need to talk.
She's pretty upset, huh?
Yeah, she's... Don't tell her I told you this, but she's fraying, you know? She's at the end of her rope.
Yeah. So am I. A few hours later, I sat in the damp, half-frozen cellar, digging through piles of my parents' old possessions as I looked for the backup rabbit traps. The caved-in corner of the room had grown bigger since September, and as the seasons changed from fall to winter, I knew things would get worse. I had pushed everything to the opposite side of the room a few weeks ago, stacking things on top of each other in the corner like I was making a Jenga tower of forgotten lives. Now, I was in the unenviable position of taking my stacks apart.
Hey, baby.
Hey, I'm in the cellar. I'll be right up.
What are you doing?
Just trying to get rid of some clutter. I'm worried about flooding from the hole in the wall once it starts snowing.
Do you want me to help? I can...
Careful.
Sorry. Hey, what's this?
She pushed aside a damp box and reached into one of the stacks, then pulled something out. Her face fell as she looked at it, and as she turned towards me, I felt a knot growing in my stomach. It's one of my dad's old guns.
It's a double-barrel shotgun. Just like... Did you know this was down here?
I kind of thought it might be.
Do you... Should I put it somewhere?
No, I need it.
What?
Jesus, not for... I mean to kill the rabbit.
Please don't start this again.
What do you want me to do?
I want you to stop. I want you to get help.
Yeah, Whit was here this morning. Thanks for warning me, by the way. It's not like I have anything important going on.
Are you... I'm trying to save your life.
Well, you can't. Nothing can. Not until that thing is dead.
It's just a fucking rabbit, Ethan. It's not the devil. Just please, for God's sake, get some perspective.
I have too much of that already.
I packed a bag. Did you know that? A couple of days ago. I packed it, and I almost left, and I just didn't... Please, you need help. You're not thinking straight. I love you, but a rabbit isn't doing this to you. You're doing this to yourself.
I don't have a choice.
Yes, you do. And so do I. I'm leaving, and I'm not coming back until this is over. Until you're you again.
I can't stop you.
Yes, you can. You could, but you're not.
Leave the gun. I'll call you when it's dead. I waited downstairs until I heard her leave. She didn't, or couldn't, understand, but how could anyone? All I had was what I knew, and what I was afraid of. Nothing else could even compare. I sat on the cellar stairs and loaded the shotgun. It was simple, inelegant, pair of faded silver barrels on top of a chestnut handle, ready to go off at a simple squeeze of its hair trigger. I was ready to use it. I put on my boots and my fur-lined coat, then wrapped a scarf around my face. I walked outside and unraveled the garden hose, pulling it across the yard to the first of the abandoned warrens. Then I stuck a nozzle down into the hole in the half-frozen ground and turned on the water. No more cat and mouse. It was going to come to me. I slowly filled each of the abandoned warrens with freezing water, listening for any squealing from below. There were only so many places the little bastard could hide. What would he do when he didn't have any? Once I was finished, I turned off the water and rolled up the hose, then walked around to the side of the house and sat down on the grass next to the burrow hole that led down to the crumbling cellar wall. With nowhere else to go, he'd have to come back. I had made sure of it. He'd freeze if he didn't. Bet Elmer Fudd never tried that one. I laid the shotgun across my lap with the barrel end facing the den's opening, then tightened the scarf around my face and tried to get comfortable. Could take hours, maybe even all night, but I'd stay out here as long as I had to. I wasn't destined to freeze to death. That much I knew for sure. I sat beside the house as evening turned to night, leaning against a thick oak tree with my shotgun at the ready. Every few minutes, I would slip one hand into my coat pocket and check my phone on the off chance anyone had called to check on me. By the time my eyes began to flutter shut, somewhere between midnight and 1 a.m., no one had. Eventually, despite my best efforts, I fell asleep. I dreamed. I dreamed that I was a child, jumping into piles of leaves and rolling around like I didn't have a care in the world. I dreamed of TV dinners, Lego sets, reruns of old cartoons. I dreamed of a life without boundaries, without pain. And then I woke up. The cold morning breeze swept across my face, and as my eyes fluttered open, the world felt new. My bundled clothes were lightly dusted with the season's first snow, and early morning sunlight was shining in through the trees. I took a deep breath in and let it out, then stretched my legs out in front of me as I shifted the gun on my lap. I slowly moved my eyes over the burrow hole, keeping my head as still as I could manage. There, sticking up from inside the den's opening, was the rabbit. Its long ears flitted back and forth, and it tilted its head, then slowly blinked its oversized eye and chittered softly. It was watching me, staring at me with its swirling galactic eye like it was waiting for me to move. My eyes darted down to the loaded shotgun on my lap, then back to the rabbit. I slowly slid my hands out of my pockets and down to my sides towards the gun, watching the one-eyed thing closely to see if it could tell I was awake. Just one more second, one more patient movement. My finger crept around the trigger. At the other end of the gun, my other hand slowly slid it into position. The rabbit hopped out from inside the hole and shuffled towards me, then froze again inches from the end of my gun. It stared at me blankly, the colors in its milky, nebulous eye barely moving. I jerked the gun up and put my finger on the trigger, shaking the snow off of my shoulders as I turned to face my prey. The rabbit didn't move. What? No, you're supposed to... You're not going to run? The rabbit blinked again, then hopped forward another inch. It lowered its head a little and pushed it up against the end of the shotgun. No, that's not... You're supposed to try to get away. Aren't you? Isn't that... nature? Unless... you know there's no point. If you know you're going to die today, if you know for a fact there's no way around it, then what's the point of running? Why try if you know you're going to fail? You know. There wasn't much left after the first shot, but I knew I needed to use both barrels. I blasted it again, shredding the furry chunks into a wet, mealy paste. Opaque liquid leaked out the front of the rabbit's destroyed head, pooling into a kaleidoscopic puddle of dull, swirling colors. It was nothing now, just powder-burned meat and food for the worms. But it knew, and it went unbothered. I got up from the snow-covered grass and dumped the spent shotgun shells onto the ground, and walked back into the house and began to untie my boots. I unwound my scarf and took off my coat, gently hanging it on the back of a kitchen chair, and walked over to the door to my office and opened it. I put the shotgun down on top of my desk and sat down in my rolling chair and looked out the window at the gently falling snow. As my eyes welled up with bitter tears, a wave of sickening déjà vu slowly washed over me. I reached out for the gun, knowing that I was no longer alone. The other me, the younger one, was watching, unable to stop me as I loaded the shotgun and raised it to my chin. I almost felt sorry for the poor bastard. But hey, he'd be where I was soon. I lowered the gun's handle towards the wooden floor and lifted one foot and put my big toe on the trigger. It was almost over. The sad joke of my life laid bare a simultaneous setup and punchline. At least this time I was in control. Or maybe I never was. I looked over at the mirror. The show was over. Elmer Fudd caught Bugs Bunny. There was nothing left but telling the audience to go home. It's actually kind of funny when you're on the other end of it. There was never any other way, just wrong turn at Albuquerque. Rabbit season. That's all, folks. I felt my toe press down on the trigger, and for a second I almost didn't do it. Oh well. I can't say I didn't see this coming.
Jackrabbit was written and directed by Jonathan Inbody. It was edited by Jeffrey Lavin, with music composed and performed by Samantha Hunt. Ethan, the narrator, was played by Jonathan Inbody. Kate was played by Andrea Inbody, and Justin Pope played Mark Whitaker. Gray Matter is a Word Search Media production. Any similarities to real people, places, or things is purely coincidental. Be kind. Rewind.